I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Kahua, and I appreciate everyone that's in attendance today. We're glad that you're with us for this conversation on sustainability. Let me tell you just one moment about Kahua before we get started. We are a leading PMIS, that's Project Management Information System, but specifically, we created the world's only low-code application platform built specifically for the complexity of the design and construction industry. And we have an ever-growing ecosystem of partner companies providing services and application enhancements. We provide purpose-built solutions specifically for contractors, their subcontractors, and for construction owners of various types, from healthcare to government, K-12 and universities, transportation, utilities, and more. We offer the ability for each stakeholder to own and maintain all the data they create on any project without having to recreate it in another stakeholder's database. We call this Kahua to Kahua. And finally, we offer an unmatched security as the only cloud service in the construction industry to achieve FedRAMP authorization for our full suite of solutions. That's a little bit about Kahua. Now let's get to the issue of the day, sustainability, and we'll start with the basics. The Oxford Dictionary defines sustainability as the avoidance of, the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. So the avoidance of the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. In the US, our Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, defines sustainable construction as the practice of creating structures and using processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout a building's life cycle, from siting to design, construction, operation, maintenance, renovation, and deconstruction. Okay, but why does all that matter? Well, BlackRock, one of the world's largest asset managers, in their 2018 CEO letter, shifted the financial markets by stating that climate risk equals financial risk. And the company made this consideration central to its investment strategy because climate change is reshaping the world's financial system. Our own Biden administration set goals to reach climate neutrality by the year 2050 in both the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and in the Inflation Reduction Act that followed. And one example of a state is California, where Governor Gavin Newsom recently approved 40 legislative actions to increase California's commitment to net zero by the year 2045. So before we go any further, now we've covered the basics, let me introduce our guest today. Firazan Speroni is a doctor of construction management, having earned her PhD at Illinois Tech, and she's also a director of infrastructure and projects at KPMG. Firazan, welcome, and thank you for being our resident expert today. Please tell us a little bit more about you personally and about the work you do at KPMG.
Thank you for having me. It's really a great pleasure to be here today. I'm a director at KPMG's ICA practice. So where ICA there stands for Infrastructure, Capital Projects, and Climate Advisory. KPMG is one of the world's largest, professional services company. We mostly are known because of our audit and accounting services, but we do all kinds of business advisory work from strategy to operations. Our ICA group particularly works on creating plans and delivery strategies for large, complex undertakings globally to minimize risk and improve ROI on these endeavors. My personal focus and passion is actually delivering these complex projects as effectively, efficiently, and sustainably for our clients.
Excellent. And Kahua is so proud that we call KPMG part of that ecosystem that I mentioned before. So let's get right to it. The first question I have for you is this. You've invested a great deal of your career and your personal capital in this topic. Why is it so important to you personally, and why is it important to KPMG?
So I came to KPMG about a year and a half ago now and discovered that we had this ESG practice nestled right in the middle of our capital projects, where we're providing the same service I described above, And it was just sitting right next to our infrastructure services, where we advise large-scale projects from ground up to completion. And KPMG is a very strong proponent of the fight against climate change. It challenges everyone to include more of ESG thinking in our day-to-day work, and that was really one of the obvious sort of directives that we got from my day one, to be honest. And just being naturally curious, this led me to create a working group and find similar-minded people or individuals who believe that really construction projects have a huge, significant role to play in this decarbonization journey. I am excited by the ideas and energy that comes out of our group every day. You know, we keep pushing each other, the practice, and our clients to do things better for the environment, just in a more socially just way and just in a well-governed manner. And KPMG, you know, from its approach to buildings and infrastructure industry, realizes how big the emissions impact of these industries are. Buildings alone are at about 40% of world's total carbon dioxide emissions. If you take infrastructure into account, that number goes up to 70%. So, you know, there are emerging ESG requirements, including SEC, you know, other global requirements that will impact the built environment. You just spoke about California. California is actually thinking about changing building codes in this area to include more of the carbon calculations. We can get into that a little bit later. So I think KPMG realizes that capital programs that we support need to be prepared for these upcoming changes so that our clients are successful in delivering them. And then we want to support decarbonization efforts through these capital program life cycles, from initiation to decommissioning, for the total life cycle of the projects.
Well, that tees me up well for the next question. And I've actually gone and I found a slide from a KPMG presentation. We brought it up here. I wanted to ask, again, based on the EPA definition that I shared before, that definition used the term throughout a building's life cycle. Right. So that opens the door to such a wide array of potential targets for the sustainability conversation. But we've only got a limited amount of time today. So I was happy to find this slide that KPMG had produced. And I suggest that we break down our topic today into these bite-sized chunks that I see here. I propose that we highlight your work on carbon reduction planning, and then we discuss how technology could aid in these efforts, and then finally, how we operationalize those ESG commitments. There's so much more we could talk about in our next conversation, but you think this is a good place to start?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right. First then, if you could just help our audience understand embodied carbon versus carbon emissions.
So let's start with, you know, sort of in a more traditional thinking of carbon emissions, which has been the norm till now, right? Right. When you say emissions, people normally think of, you know, the emissions that come out of driving a car, or, you know, cooling your home, what comes out of your chimneys, etc. Right. But this is what's what's referred commonly as operational carbon. So in the slide over there, you'll see the little purple, you know, sort of area. And if you think about the building's life cycle, that'll be the area that it covers. But when you start thinking about life cycle, all the materials and the labor it takes to build this car, or to build that, you know, buildings, or the roadway starts coming into the picture. So as you'll see, there's a product portion in there where we start talking about the raw material supply, the manufacturing sort of, and then the product being brought, transported to the job site, construction and installation. Then we can skip over to the maintenance and repair. Actually, anything that you replace throughout the life cycle of that project, think about it, that still goes part of the embodied carbon, because that's not operational. That's part of the planning. It has to be, rather, it would be better. And then you go into the deconstruction, demolition, waste processing, and hopefully there's some circularity there to bring it full circle. So that's what we mean by the life cycle approach. And as you can see, the operational amount is as huge as it is. The embodied carbon right now in projects is coming up to 50% of the total life cycle greenhouse gases emissions on a project.
I see. So purple represents what we've traditionally thought of, that smoke that we see coming out of a pipe or a chimney somewhere. But all of the blue is kind of hidden to that.
Correct. So that is, as I said, it's up to 50%, depending on what type of project you're looking at. It could be a little bit less for, more, mechanically or the more dense project, but overall we're coming. And KPMG actually just put out a report. You might be able to find this, and if you're interested, just send me a note. I'll send it to you. This number is actually going to grow because the operational efficiencies and technology will continue to bring that number down. But if we don't start dealing with embodied carbon, the percentage of sort of what's left for us to deal with will be mainly the embodied carbon in, say, 10, 20, 50 years. So there's a huge sort of we call it a white elephant in the room that feels like we're not looking at. So by talking about these terms and getting the project teams to speak this language of carbon really is our main goal to help companies make more informed, holistic decisions that incorporate the risks in this life cycle that you can see. So this will touch about, of course, project management, your cost and schedule planning for the project, and eventually this is a business decision that the stakeholders will have to deal with.
So how do you engage your clients early in your process? It seems to me that carbon reduction planning fits really well into the life cycle term the EPA uses. How does KPMG specifically, though, engage? You used the term just a moment ago to look holistically at the issue. How do you get your clients to look that way?
So, I mean, we really start by embedding ourselves, to like a better word, with the client's teams to understand everything about their processes, their protocols, their practices, because more often than not, they're great practices that are already they're available, that they're practicing, but may need certain sort of fine-tuning to be able to add these additional elements of carbon, and then maybe require a focus around material and product procurement processes. A lot of the decisions about embodied carbon come early on. So the earlier we can get involved, the better it is, the more impact we can have in the overall sort of embodied carbon amounts of these projects. So at this early stage, we can set boundaries for what's allowed in the project's clients. We've done certain projects, but we've really sort of identified red lists of projects. Red lists of products, not to use or eliminate completely out of the project's life cycle. And then we start looking for, some quick wins that really won't sacrifice cost, schedule, and quality of the job. Some of them are really behavioral. There's some low cost and no cost items there that we can start incorporating. So these are, sort of get us started. And then eventually the goal is moving towards making carbon conscious decisions on every area, from materials, product, construction site operations, the waste management of that as we can go throughout the life cycle, so that we're now truly reducing the life cycle impact. So again, life cycle impact is the key word here. And one recent project, I'm going to give you a little bit of good news, actually. We studied green procurement, the value of green procurement for a client to try and identify these, both hotspots and, where to turn it into value. And we found out that material producers actually had a lot of the information we were looking for. So that information just wasn't getting translated in the value chain, in the supply chain, because owners didn't ask, contractors didn't ask, so it just wasn't in the requirements. So with a simple no cost almost of change like that, which of course will require some thinking into the contracting process and how things will be dealt with down the line, but it just wasn't on their radar. And by simply adding a requirement on EPD declarations, now you have more measurable data to start reporting on your projects.
All right. Well, I heard a couple of things that really resonated. One is a method that we propose for our clients at Kahua that gets some early wins. You don't have to boil the ocean at one time. Get some wins, build some momentum. But it really sounds like you're trying to make this part of your client's DNA, and that's a great thing. Your team seems to have a great method for attacking the problem. But we're talking about the construction industry, and the best laid plans probably encounter some challenges along the way. So are there common obstacles that you face in implementing these practices? And if so, how do you overcome those? Are there some things that you encounter at a lot of different client engagements where you just see it's an obstacle to sustainability and you have to come up with a way to around that? Are there some common things?
So I think that last example I gave was a little bit of a tee into this reporting portion, right? You know, sort of where we look for it, we first need to find the data that we're looking for because it wasn't asked for, but to reduce carbon emissions and really set sustainability commitments in a transparent way, capital programs first need to be able to collect and track this carbon data within their project so that it can just boil up from ground project levels. And many programs are currently unable to do that, we find. So this calculation and reducing overall embodied carbon requires participation of all of us, all of the project stakeholders. You know, material producers need to start tracking and disclosing their emissions during production. Designers who actually do a great job of normal calculations, making sure, you know, low-cost alternatives, low-carbon alternatives are being incorporated. Owners need to monitor and report. You know, we have policymakers that are coming up with great policies, changing regulations, putting codes in place, you know, coming from the government regulation too. And the one that I forget there is general contractors who also need to take on more to start sort of being a conduit to this passage of information, even though it's not, you know, sort of their wheelhouse. They will need to be able to speak this language and understand the math behind it so that, you know, they can manage their changes and everything follows as accurately as possible. Our systems allow it. So to overcome this, what do we need? We need standards, we need policy, we need technology, and we need to have a structured methodology in place to calculate, but not calculate just for the sake of calculate. We need to essentially, after the calculation, the baseline, you need to show where you're making savings, whether it be in the greenhouse gases portion, the carbon portion. Then we need to track and monitor the embodied portion throughout the life of the project.
Okay, I think we have a slide that speaks to that. Again, another KPMG, and you use the term contextualize the opportunity. What does that mean?
So I think that's where we start getting into, you know, the more calculations around ROI and really putting it into operationalizing this high-level ESG and sustainability goals that we have. It's great to have net zero goals, but sometimes I do ask myself, or if I'm in a room with someone, I do ask them, what do you mean by net zero? Net zero what? Where do you start measuring that? Because if we're not dealing with this almost 50% of the gases that were, you know, sort of embedded into the structure, are we really net zero? You know, how net zero are we is the question there. And then actually, a lot of the, you know, maybe not say a lot, but, you know, a good amount of the conversations that I'm having these days, including contractors, actually are starting to go towards understanding what that means, and the need to bring this to a project level is becoming more clear in the construction industry, just for the simple fact that construction is a project business. I mean, we do everything at a measure on a project level, and ESG and sustainability, it just makes sense to sort of start getting some metrics out of the projects that we're creating a lot of these impact on the world around us. And I think if I'm just getting back to that little challenge area that we're talking about, you know, I just want to highlight again, we just need to prioritize this vision, and sometimes that could be a challenge in projects. You know, cost comes into play, schedule comes into play, and obviously there's different business decisions, and we're a diverse, you know, group of stakeholders at every point. Everybody has a different viewpoint, but I think where we start coming together is contextualizing the opportunities where we can look at the projects in a not just, you know, short, you know, narrow-sighted manner, but in a lifetime manner, so that we can really start talking about the longer-term values that we're creating, whether it's through the, you know, gases, you know, avoided, or some of the other business decisions we made. That longer timeline tends to tell a better story of a project's true impact, and that's what we mean by contextualizing the opportunity, focusing more on the returns.
Okay, let's turn the topic to tech, and that's where Kahua shines. Of course, Kahua is a platform that allows anyone to create applications for unique business processes. It's one of the things that sets us apart from all the other PMIS vendors. It not only allows for flexibility, but provides agility, allowing our clients and partners to create or modify applications to fit their unique processes, and to do that in a really fast and efficient way. And to that point, and to the point of today's topic, a great example of this is an app that was created for the GSA last year, the General Services Administration of the United States government. The GSA Sustainability app is used to track and document the sustainability scope, goals, compliance, narrative, and guiding principles that are applicable to a project. I've asked the team to put a link into our chat so our viewers can go to the GSA's YouTube channel. So it's not a Kahua commercial so much as this is the GSA's learning tutorial, so you can see for yourself from that owner's perspective. See the video they created for their team. So let me ask though, Firsan, how else does technology need to assist in these efforts? And what do tech companies like Kahua need to bring to the market to improve outcomes?
Yes, so thanks for that question. I mean, I did see that, sort of YouTube. I probably watched the video, and I recommend people on the call do that as well. So it's really informative, and it's great seeing companies like you and other tech companies starting to take interest in this world and really sort of put real life applications. And again, to GSA, kudos as well too for taking the lead on that one as well. We talk about obviously the data. There's a data collection side of it, and obviously technology is the main tool there. So in terms of putting together those initial plans and how to start calculating the original baselines that we're talking about for carbon, that's just a given. But without technology, really implementing sustainability or this calculation would require manual entry, or you would risk inconsistent data entries as in any other type of data entry, and a lot of time and energy starts going towards just putting data in, as opposed to really thinking about how to improve the sustainability, how to improve the current project. So we'd rather have that time spent sort of on working on what can the engineers and project designers can help us get better solutions into the project. It also, technology helps us communications there, sort of showing as you're sort of reporting there. It's a very one of the easiest ways to really say, with the click of a button, you can sort of aggregate what you've sort of collected on different projects, and your year-end reporting for ESG on certain carbon items becomes much easier, for example, and more transparent. So you can take this down to really impacting all this, almost like a way to avoid greenwashing and all that sort of terminology that we use. So it is really, it makes the process more reliable, repeatable, scalable, obviously. So we do need to sort of keep continuing and improving these tools that we're working on.
Okay, so you need us to be able to make the data part of it easy. The work of specifying and building is different. We need to make the use of data very easy. So you've teed me up for the next question I have for you. You started to talk about it, I think, but I use the word operationalize. So how do we as an industry operationalize these ESG commitments?
Yeah, I did. You're right. I did start diving into that a little bit. It's really, I think the main shift in here is really trying to go down to the project level is what we think is critical in some of these measurements that we're trying to make. Sort of the high level corporate goals are great, they're needed, they set the vision, but that materiality assessment is carried over to project, and that way people on your projects day to day have a more clear target to measure, to monitor, to control for the projects that they're in charge of. In addition, and this is not instead of, this is in addition to everything we're doing at the corporate strategy level. So we're putting basically these two layers together to be able to to be able to transfer more information from the ground up more accurately. So essentially the client teams have a roadmap when it comes to working with teams like us, and real self to saying, okay, here's what we're doing on technologies, we're going to collect the data, and here's how we're going to sort of assess certain scenarios to say, in one case, for example, okay, do we sort of sacrifice some schedule because we want to make sure we get this certain carbon credit for a material that we want to use. So as you can see, it quickly switches from being a carbon calculation question to a business question, and that's when we keep saying, how we operationalize, contextualize ESG, sustainability, and whatever dimension in that, sort of platform that you're looking at. But essentially, just kind of like being a little bit of using a little cliche here, but you really can't measure what you don't measure. You really can't manage, I should say, what you don't measure. And it's at the end of our methodology, we really take a key role, as KPMG is being sort of a lot of experience in that area in terms of auditing and, just business. We sort of learn from our colleagues in other lines of the business from that, but we know how to monitor the impact of these changes, these processes, and provide reporting expertise for clients where they can, sort of turn back and use that to continue to improve their processes. So we try to use available technology and bring more tools into their toolbox to increase, as we said, the data reliability and help them with project governance, which seems to be one of the more important elements of this puzzle. You have to have good governance to make sure all the steps that we're talking about is being required by the project.
Yeah, perhaps it's another good example of how tech providers can help with operationalizing ESG commitments. And it's a good example of the agility of our project management platform. So I'll ask our team to add another link to the chat area. I'm thinking of an app that was developed by one of our partners on Indus. They created an app last year to recognize and certify vendors as DBE partners. They track the financial information of those vendors and create a separate database for tracking DBE spend. So again, important that technology can adapt to what these current needs are, because the current needs are always changing. That's certainly true with IIJA and with the all the legislation that's come out for infrastructure projects going forward at this very busy time.
We could go another hour on that one probably, or the incentives. So the good thing is there's some incentives the industry is providing. So I hope everyone that calls starts looking for them and how they may apply to their projects, because there's some really good tax credits or other grants that are available for certain initiatives in this world.
Firsan, you have been a tremendous guest. I am so thankful that you took this time with us to help our audience understand why this is important and why your firm, KPMG, and why Kahua are so interested in helping the industry achieve better goals. So